Clint Eastwood has spent over 7 decades shaping American cinema. From the myths of the lone gunman in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to the quiet moral reckonings of Unforgiven and Million Dollar Baby, he has remained Hollywood's most stoic storyteller. So when at the age of 91 he was asked to name his favorite films, fans expected another list of dusty westerns or box office champions. Instead, Eastwood surprised everyone. He chose stories about music, war, family, guilt, and redemption. 6 of them he directed himself, and one timeless classic he has cherished since his early days as an actor. Each film reveals a different side of the man behind the squint, the jazz lover, the philosopher, the craftsman who believes art should feel honest rather than perfect. Number 7. Bird, 1988. Eastwood's countdown begins not with gunfire or dusty trails, but with a saxophone's wail cutting through cigarette smoke. Bird, from 1988, is his elegy to the jazz legend Charlie Bird Parker, a man whose musical brilliance soared to impossible heights even as addiction pulled him toward ruin. Eastwood constructs the film like an extended jam session. Moments overlap, memories riff on one another, and time itself bends around the melody of a man chasing perfection he can never hold. Eastwood, a lifelong jazz fan since his boyhood in Northern California, said he felt an almost moral duty to tell Parker's story honestly. It was a good script on the analysis of the self-destructiveness of personality, he said. People who insist on sinking into the abyss. Success being idolized by other musicians, none of it was enough. That fascination with self-destruction runs through much of Eastwood's work, from Unforgiven to Mystic River. But Bird gave it a musical heartbeat. Forrest Whitaker's portrayal of Parker remains hypnotic. He channels the man's restless energy, that mix of ecstasy and torment that defines genius. His performance won him the Best Actor award at the 1988 Cannes Film Festival and a Golden Globe nomination. Eastwood himself received the Golden Globe for Best Director, while the film won the Oscar for Best Sound. Critics called Bird one of the most heartfelt films ever made by a director better known for silence than melody. Visually, Bird is like a memory etched in cigarette smoke. Cinematographer Jack N. Green bathes Parker's world in blues, ambers, and deep shadows, evoking the claustrophobic intimacy of jam sessions, where emotion matters more than dialogue. Eastwood insisted on using Parker's own recordings digitally remastered, so that each solo felt as if Parker were playing live in the room. The editing, rhythmic and unpredictable, mirrors jazz itself, sometimes racing, sometimes pausing long enough for pain to echo. Despite modest box office numbers, Bird marked a turning point in Eastwood's career, proving he could step outside his cowboy persona and craft something lyrical, deeply human, and musically alive. Jazz, Eastwood once said, is the most honest music. You can't fake it. Neither could he. Bird was his attempt to film honesty itself, to capture that fragile space between brilliance and collapse. Number 6. Letters from Iwo Jima, 2006. Eastwood's career has always balanced myth and humanity, but with Letters from Iwo Jima, he did something few American directors dare do. He told a World War II story entirely from the enemy's perspective. Released in 2006 as a companion piece to Flags of Our Fathers, the film shifts the camera across the Pacific to the same volcanic island but through Japanese eyes. The story follows General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, played by Ken Watanabe, and a humble baker-turned-soldier, Seigo, portrayed by Kazunari Ninomiya. Together they dig into the black sand of Iwo Jima, preparing for a battle they know they cannot win. They write letters home to families they will never see again. Through their words, Eastwood captures the quiet dignity of men stripped of propaganda and reduced to what they truly are: human beings terrified, loyal, and longing for peace. Eastwood later called this film one of his proudest achievements. It shows what it was like for them, he explained. They had to go to the island and were told not to plan on coming back. But they still had hope. And that empathy is what makes Letters from Iwo Jima such a rare film. Eastwood himself is a veteran, and he was all too aware of the simple fact that heroism and tragedy look precisely the same in any language. Shot in subdued tones of ash, gray, and sepia, The film seems to unfold inside memory itself. Cinematographer Tom Stern echoes the volcanic dust, with a palette that's gritty, colorless, and timeless. Eastwood filmed mostly in Japanese, relying on translators, but insisted the emotional truth transcended language. The score is comprised of minimal piano chords and echoes of distant battles, emphasizing loneliness far more than violence. Critics hailed the film as extraordinary. It picked up 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, and 1 for Best Sound Editing. Many historians noted no major Hollywood film had so compassionately portrayed Japan's wartime experience. Together with Flags of Our Fathers, it forms a cinematic yin and yang, 2 sides of the same heartbreak. Letters from Iwo Jima is more than a war story. It is a meditation on futility, honor, and the thin thread of humanity that connects supposed enemies. Eastwood once said he made the film to remind audiences that every flag has a story, and that war, however necessary or justified, always leaves the same silence behind. Number 5, Million Dollar Baby, 2004. Few people predicted that when Million Dollar Baby showed up in 2004, Clint Eastwood would deliver one of the emotionally most overwhelming films of his career when he was already in his 70s. The story of a lonely boxing trainer and a waitress who dreams of becoming a champion grew much more than a sports drama into a meditation on faith, family, and final choices. Eastwood plays Frankie Dunn, a veteran trainer with ghosts of loss and estranged from his daughter. When Hilary Swank's Maggie Fitzgerald walks into his gym, 2 wounded souls form an unlikely bond. Maggie rises through the ranks with Frankie in her corner, but a tragic accident leaves her paralyzed from the neck down. The film then veers from triumph to the impossible question of mercy and dignity. For Eastwood, it was never a boxing movie. He said he saw it as a story about 2 people who have no family and are very reticent, about a father and daughter finding each other and facing a terrible moral decision. That duality, love as both salvation and burden, is what makes the film so haunting. Even the title is a kind of bitter irony. Maggie's million-dollar dream costs her everything. Cinematographer Tom Stern shot the film in a shadow-heavy palette of greens and grays that evoke the dim light of the boxing gym and the loneliness of age. Eastwood's direction is precise, every cut landing like a boxer's jab. He also composed the score himself, a sparse piano theme that lingers like a confession you can't take back. When the movie was released, it stunned audiences and critics alike. At the 77th Academy Awards, it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Hilary Swank, and Best Supporting Actor for Morgan Freeman. Eastwood became the oldest director ever to win the Oscar at that time. Yet, he treated its success with typical humility, saying, "I just wanted to make a small story about 2 people who care about each other." Million Dollar Baby endures because of its brutal honesty. It offers no clear answers on morality or faith. Instead, it's a film that forces us to ask our own questions. What would you do for someone you love when there's no right choice? Where does dignity end and despair begin? Eastwood's camera lingers on faces long after the dialogue ends, as if to remind us that real love exists in silence. Even now, Eastwood considers Maggie Fitzgerald's story one of his most personal works, a testament to quiet grace in a world that glorifies victory. There are no winners here, only human beings fighting for meaning in the final round. Number 4, Mystic River, 2003. With Mystic River, Clint Eastwood stepped into the shadows of a modern tragedy, not set in the Old West or on a battlefield, but on quiet streets in Boston, where the past never really dies. This 2003 adaptation of Dennis Lehane's novel tells the story of 3 childhood friends bound by one act of violence and a lifetime of guilt. It is a story about fate, revenge, and how pain ripples through generations like water spreading across a dark river. The movie focuses on Jimmy Markham, played by Sean Penn, a father and ex-con whose teenage daughter is murdered, Sean Devine, played by Kevin Bacon, a detective investigating the case, and Dave Boyle, played by Tim Robbins, a man still haunted by the trauma of his childhood abduction. As suspicion grows, tragedy begins to echo itself, and the line between justice and vengeance collapses. Eastwood said what drew him to the story was its inevitability. It sensed that some destinies are written long before we recognize them. It deals with fate giving people a bad hand that keeps getting worse, he said. No amount of sane advice can stop the tragedy. That fatalism is pure Eastwood, a belief that human beings, however moral or strong, remain at the mercy of forces larger than themselves, memory, guilt, and the ghosts of what they have done. His direction is restrained and deliberate. There are no stylized gunfights or dramatic speeches, only heavy silence, like the weight of truth pressing down on every frame. Cinematographer Tom Stern drenches the film in muted browns and grays, evoking a city drained of hope, while Eastwood's own score drifts between piano and low strings, mournful and sparse, like a confession whispered too late. Sean Penn gives one of his most impassioned performances, interspersing rage with heartbreak. His scream upon finding his daughter's body behind police tape is one of the most harrowing moments in modern cinema. Tim Robbins' depiction of Dave, a man crushed by lifelong trauma, won him the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, while Penn won Best Actor. Eastwood's direction was nominated for both the Academy Award and Golden Globe. Critics called the film a Greek tragedy in flannel shirts, and they were right. Mystic River is not about villains. It is about victims of fate. Everyone in this story is trying, in their own flawed way, to make sense of pain, and that is what makes it universal. Number 3. The Outlaw Josie Wales, 1976. Long before Clint Eastwood became the elder statesman of American cinema, he was its outlaw philosopher. In The Outlaw Josie Wales, he created one of the most profound westerns of its era, a story not of revenge alone, but of redemption, community, and forgiveness in a world scarred by war. Set in the aftermath of the Civil War, the film follows Josie Wales, a Missouri farmer whose wife and son are murdered by Union marauders. Consumed by grief, he joins a band of Confederate guerrillas and becomes a killer, only to see his comrades slaughtered after surrendering. Branded an outlaw, Josie flees into the wild, hunted by bounty hunters and soldiers. Yet, as he journeys across the ravaged South, he begins to gather a surrogate family, a Cherokee elder named Lone Waddy, a young Navajo woman, and a widowed settler named Sarah Turner with her granddaughter. The fragile community bound by survival and kindness comprises them all. For Eastwood, that transformation from vengeance to belonging was the heart of the film. He's a man who has become a cynic because of the war, Eastwood said, and then slowly rejuvenates, building a surrogate family. That emotional renewal mirrored Eastwood's own evolution as a filmmaker. After years playing solitary gunslingers for directors such as Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, he used Josie Wales to challenge the myth of the lone hero. His camera lingers not on shootouts, but on human gestures, a smile shared around a campfire, a quiet moment of trust, a man learning that peace can be stronger than revenge. Shot across the dusty plains of Arizona and Utah, the film's landscapes feel biblical, vast, punishing, yet strangely forgiving. Eastwood's direction is lean and instinctive, full of poetry in its pauses and beauty in its restraint. Jerry Fielding's score mixes mournful violins with soft harmonica, creating a tone of elegy rather than triumph. The film became one of the biggest Western hits of the 1970s and was later selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry as culturally and historically significant. Critics hailed it as a rare Western where the gunfighter's journey leads inward toward peace, not blood. Yet, Josie Wales remains deeply Eastwood. It asks the question that defines his entire career. Can a man who has done terrible things ever find grace? Number 2, Unforgiven, 1992. When Unforgiven arrived in theaters in 1992, it felt less like a Western than an elegy, a mournful funeral march for the genre that made Clint Eastwood a legend. The film tells the story of William Money, a once notorious killer turned widowed pig farmer, struggling to raise his children and live quietly. But when two cowboys brutalize a prostitute in a frontier town, Money is drawn back into a world he thought he had buried forever. It's a classic setup. Yet, Eastwood uses it to dismantle every myth the Western ever told about heroism, violence, and redemption. As star and director, Eastwood approached Unforgiven with the weight of history, his own and Hollywood's. He dedicated the film to his mentors Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, calling it his final statement on the West. The dusty, rain-soaked landscapes and muted tones set the mood. This isn't the golden frontier of legends, but a place where the air is thick with regret and every gunshot feels like a sin. Money joins his old partner Ned Logan, played by Morgan Freeman, and a brash young bounty hunter, the Schofield Kid, to claim the reward for killing the two cowboys. But as the killings unfold, the hero's mask slips away. Money is not righteous, he is haunted. His hands shake when he drinks, his voice cracks when he kills, and his eyes reveal the cost of every bullet he has ever fired. The characters are complex, including the villains, with good points. The hero goes against his own instincts. Unforgiven is not about a gunfighter saving the day. It is about a man trying and failing to save his soul. There's a climactic, storm-soaked shootout in which Money rides into town to avenge his friend. It's one of cinema's great reversals. The audience expects justice. What they get is damnation. Money kills everyone in his path, but not as a hero. Rather as a ghost reclaiming the darkness he tried to leave behind. And when he rides away, there is no victory music. Only silence, the kind that lingers long after the credits roll. Unforgiven won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, marking out Eastwood's place among Hollywood's giants once and for all. Yet beyond the trophies, it closed the book on the myth of the noble gunfighter. The man who once defined the Western had just buried it. First, Sunset Boulevard, 1950. Clint Eastwood's favorite film isn't one he made. It isn't even a Western, war film, or crime drama. Instead, it's Billy Wilder's 1950 masterpiece, Sunset Boulevard, a dark Hollywood satire of fame, decay, and delusion. For a man who has built his life inside that very system, Eastwood's love for this story speaks volumes about how he looks at fame as both dream and curse. The film opens with a dead man face down in a swimming pool. We hear his narration. He is Joe Gillis, played by William Holden, a struggling screenwriter who gets mixed up with Norma Desmond, played by Gloria Swanson, a faded silent film star residing in a decaying mansion. Norma dreams of a comeback. Joe becomes captive to her emotionally and financially until he tries to escape and she shoots him. The story ends with Norma's delusional descent down the staircase, whispering, "All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up." Eastwood has called Sunset Boulevard his favorite film of all time. He admires its balance between Swanson's theatricality and Holden's grounded realism. "I always liked Billy Wilder," Eastwood said, "and I love the way 2 very different performances could coexist so perfectly." For Eastwood, Wilder's genius lay in restraint. Sunset Boulevard is not a melodrama, it is a quiet scream. Wilder, who fled Nazi Germany, understood the absurdity of chasing immortality in Hollywood. Eastwood, who has spent 7 decades navigating stardom, clearly recognizes that truth. The theme of the film fame as a form of madness parallels Eastwood's lifelong wariness of celebrity. He has always been leery of the spotlight, allowing work to speak for itself. Norma Desmond's obsession, by contrast, shows what happens when art becomes a mirror that never looks away. Sunset Boulevard was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and took home 3, including Best Screenplay and Best Score. Today, it is regarded as one of cinema's greatest achievements, not just a critique of Hollywood, but a love letter to its ghosts. Eastwood's admiration makes perfect sense. Like Wilder, he is a craftsman who believes storytelling should peel away the myth to show human fragility underneath. In Sunset Boulevard, he sees the ultimate cautionary tale, not about the rewards of fame, but about its cost. Over the decades, Eastwood has picked up something from the masters. How Billy Wilder could be precise, William Wyler humane, John Ford poetically moral. In every frame he ever shot, those influences can be heard. At 91, Clint Eastwood is not just reflecting on movies. He's reflecting on a lifetime spent searching for balance between grace and grit. His 7 favorite films reveal what he values most, not power or even justice, but honesty. Honesty in the kind of way it strips away artifice and looks life straight in the eye. From Bird's smoky jazz clubs to the battlefields of letters from Iwo Jima, From the heartbreak of Million Dollar Baby to the weight of morality in Unforgiven, each film reflects his belief that strength comes from vulnerability. Whether it is a boxer who learns compassion through his loss, a gunfighter haunted by his past, or a forgotten jazz genius in pursuit of redemption through pain, Eastwood's favorites share one truth: greatness is not about victory, but the courage to face yourself.